It's landlord horror stories, just in time for Halloween. Some of the crazy stories that we've all experienced. If you're a real estate investor, and I'm a longtime real estate investor, we all have them, but it shouldn't turn you off to real estate investing. It's part of the process. I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor. I have done thousands of deals. We've renovated thousands of homes. We've put tenants in thousands of homes. And my gosh, we have ups and downs and crazy stories from around the country where we've done real estate over the years. And today, on our special edition episode for Halloween, we are going to be sharing some of our landlord horror stories, things that you wouldn't believe. And if you're new to real estate investing, hopefully this will open your eyes to the things that you will experience at some point. It can be a little scary sometimes. It can make you scratch your head sometimes, but it really shouldn't turn you off to real estate investing. This is part of the process. This is part of the fun. And our guest today is Michael Zuber. He is that person. He's that investor who went from 0 properties and then all the way up to 175 units. And now he focuses on helping other people do the very same things. He actually pitched me this idea and said, Clayton, let's do like a landlord horror stories episode. Michael, tell people what you do, where you came from, how you got involved in real estate investing, and happy Halloween to you, my friend.
Oh, first off, thank you very much for the invitation and happy Halloween to you too. I understand you have a couple of young ones, so you're going to go trick-or-treating this evening, and I'm going to go escape to a restaurant and hide from all the kids.
That's right. I've got a 2-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and they're super excited. They woke up at like 4 in the morning this morning, so they're going to be miserable by 7 o'clock tonight, out of their minds. Hopped up.
Have fun with that. Sugar high is coming. So
yeah.
Again, Michael Zuber, 15-year vet, buy and hold a landlord. I've got nearly 200 units. Have well over 1,000 tenant stories or tenants I've worked with over the last 15 years. And with in this business, it is a people business, and with that, people have challenges and problems and issues. And some of these stories they really hurt when you're going through them. And I think there's one year we should talk about them because, you and I, Clayton, real estate does lots of great things, but there's maybe one day a year, and I think Halloween's the day that just flush it out of our systems and talk about some of the horror stories. So one rental at a time is really a program I've put together because it's frankly how I retired from a very demanding full-time job, right? I traveled the world at 100 nights, 200,000 air miles, and I wanted, and then I retired, right? I retired February 1st of this year. And frankly, after a couple of days of being excited, I got frankly depressed because I didn't have that next thing to go chase or go do, right? I was missing. So either I was going to go back and work for the man because I was only 45, or I was going to throw him at something. So what I've done is I've created a YouTube channel called One Rental at a Time. I wrote an ebook called One Rental at a Time, and I just give everything away. You can go to One Rental at a Time. There's probably 160 videos there now. I'm putting out a real estate 101 class. Everything I'm doing is for free. Again, the book, you have to email me to get it because it's a PDF. I don't actually produce it. If I produced it, I'd have to get the cost back, and I don't want to charge anybody anything. So that's who I am. That's what I do. And the goal is to try to help busy professionals at least get 4 rentals. If we could do that, 4 buy and hold rentals, I believe their financial future will be better. Maybe they won't retire. Maybe they won't do anything like that, but often and they'll be in a much better spot. So that's what I'm trying to do now.
When you look at these 1 rentals at a time, this philosophy, I know people say, well, you can never build wealth that way. That's too slow. And that's the way I've done it. That's the way you've done it. What do you say to people who say you can't do it that way?
I would tell you real estate's not a get rich quick. It's a get rich for sure mentality, right? It took me 15 years, and it probably took me 10 years to really start feeling the cash flow. That was meaningful, right? It was always a drag, all of that. But it does build up over time. You pay off debt, rents go up, values go up, you refi, you build, you 1031. There's so many things in real estate that are great that if you just let time help you, you can do this, right? We went from, the first 4 years, we got to 8 units or 8 properties. That's not going to, probably won't retire lots of people. But then we did a whole 18 months of 1031 exchanges, and we went from 8 to 80. Right? No new capital. That retires lots of people. And then we went through the crash, and we bought lots more. And the real estate is a time-friendly business. You've got to get in. You've got to execute. And you absolutely can retire 1 rental at a time. I've done it. You've done it. Many others have.
That's great. And when you look at the stock market, you and I talked about this the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly know a thing or two about the stock market. And I get these naysayers sometimes when I do an episode where I talk about the ups and downs of the stock market and why, I've certainly moved my money out of the stock market into real estate. Give our audience a sense of your background, why you know so much about this, and why you're happy to duke it out with anyone who wants to argue about the stock market with you.
Absolutely right. So I'm an accountant by training, right? So I have that kind of analytical set. I have an MBA in investing. I spent better part of 5 years day trading stocks in my late 20s and early 30s. So I get the stock market. I get puts, options, calls, straddles. I get it, right? You want to play the game? Let's play the game.
Right.
But stock market is it's the largest casino on the planet. It just happens to be legal. And, there are so many variables outside an individual investor's control. Eventually, the casino wins. And, I had a 3 or 4 year run where I thought I was Warren Buffett. And then a matter of, I think I said 48 hours, maybe it was 72 hours. It was all gone. Wow. So I have the scars and happy to talk to anybody who wants to and talk about the stock market other than real estate.
Wonderful. Well, my guest is Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, and we have got the chat window up. We're going to be talking about landlord horror stories today. So here is the chat. If you are watching us live right now, please feel free to go in and share your stories. Be as detailed as possible, because we're going to go through a few of these here and some of your personal stories. Things you've experienced with your rentals. But I want to sort of ask Michael right now. You want to kick it off, Michael? What is one of your first landlord horror stories, something you've experienced when you got started with real estate investing? Or maybe even currently, maybe it happened last week.
Yeah, I think we'll go in time horizon. So I prepared lots to talk about. We'll go with the first one. And I thought the first one would be important because I think it would have kicked most people out of the real estate game, right? I really believe real estate tests you. And a lot of these horrors you hear about are those tests, and it's, do you pass the test or not? So it begins with our very first rental. We spent well over a year kind of, are we in, are we out, are we going to do something, where are we going? Long story short, we finally pull the trigger. We buy a property for 107, it rents for 1095. We're happy. We do, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 grand of repairs. Tenant moves in. We're on cloud 9, right? Just think about it for a minute. You've bought your first rental after a year and you're like, yay, we did it. And about 2 weeks later, unbeknownst to us, the couple splits up. Wife takes off. I think she moved out of state. We never see her again. The husband is not too happy about that and decides to go on a drinking binge for a long time and destroy our house and never pay rent again.
Oh no.
I happen to invest in California, which means we went through the end of the month. They didn't pay their payment. 3-day notice. Start evictions, and 90 days later they're out. By the way, they decide to destroy the property and we had to spend 15 or 18 grand to repair it. But this horror story is, again, it was our first deal. We basically got 1 month of the first 6 months of our property because we had to kick them out, and then we had to repair it, and then we had to release it. And when I look back at it, and I wrote about it in our book, I think that would have probably kicked most people out. If it wasn't for my wife, who was 100% with us, I wouldn't be talking to you today. I'd be on a plane selling software. So that horror story, that test was painful.
Yeah, I mean, and what's amazing about that story is that you didn't give up, because
exactly.
So many people would have. You've definitely talked to people that would have scared them off. I know that I've certainly talked to people that are like, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. But what's amazing to me too is that people can go through like the stock market and lose everything, but then they still contribute to their 401k. Like they're not scared of that, but they're scared of having a crazy tenant. Explain that one to me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the mindset of the stock market investor. I mean, just think about what happened in Amazon in the last, I don't know, let's call it last week. I haven't checked this morning, so maybe it's back, but it went down over 20% inside of 4 days, if I remember. That's, I don't know about you, but that kind of hurts, right? In 4 days, 20% gone. And most of the people I talk to are like, oh, do I buy more? I'm like, really? That's the question? Right? It's just, it'll be back. Well, why don't you say that about real estate, right? It'll be, I mean, it's just when it changes so fast, I don't know. It's about people's psychology. I go on and most.
Yeah. We have a bunch of great comments coming in here today. I want to read one from Kieran Dewaris. He says, my tenant defaulted on 5 months rent and lights and water, left his garbage of months in my apartment with broken blinds in the gate, but eventually got him out. Now going to court to claim for it. So there you go. You went after him. What do you think he's going to get for it, Michael? Do you think he's going to be able to get anything back from that? What's your sense?
So that's certainly, certainly something you can do. I mean, I think gone after probably well over 100 tenants by this point in my career, like really gone after and tried to get something. I did get one. They, when you put something on their claim or on their credit, you can get, years later. It's often an extra cost, and you have to ask yourself, is it worth the time and the cost? Because you're not done spending money when you go after them, and you might feel better getting, a $5,000 judgment against them. But at this point, I ask myself, what are my chances of getting something? So some people I do, right? If they're malicious or I feel like they're doing something on purpose, I'll go that extra level. But if it's just a life event and, something happened and, whatever, it's a cost of doing business, and I'll save that extra $500 and just flush it and move on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. So a little bit, I'm trying to think through some of mine. Here's a horror story we recently had, which is a tenant was complaining about, we had a new heating system placed in one of our rental properties, and, you spend a good amount of money to put in a new furnace, and there was just this smell, there was just this odor, and it wasn't heating properly, and we just had it installed, so we know it was working well. And finally, the property management team goes out to the property, and the woman couldn't find her cat for a while. So lo and behold, it was her cat that was stuck inside the furnace. In fact, we did a whole video on this as the cat in my furnace, if you want to check it out. But yes, the poor cat was in there being ignited on a regular basis inside the furnace of our rental property. But there is a good news. You think, okay, this, you're smelling burning cat on a regular basis. You would think that cat would be dead. No, cats have 9 lives, so they managed to reach in, get this little kitty out. I'm sure a little worse for the wear, a little burned up, a little charred, but the cat ended up being okay, and the furnace ended up being okay, and we didn't have to replace a furnace, and we didn't have to replace a cat. So that was one of my first horror stories.
Oof.
Yeah. A lot of fun. So, Michael, another fun horror story that you've got?
There was one where we were walking a multi-unit property, and it was in a great part of town. We had seen, I think it was a 5-plex. So we'd seen 4 of the units, and we're walking up to the 5th one, and the guy sitting outside sort of watch a little vegetable garden, and we're just chit-chatting and thinking what's going on, and want to walk the unit, right? Because we want to see every unit just to make sure what's going on. He's uncomfortable with that, and trying to go, no, it's just like all the others, and yada yada yada. And I go, well, okay, my wife will stay here, but I've got to go, or we're not going to do this, right? So he goes, begrudgingly opens the door, and now I find out why. He's the classic hoarder story. He's been there 20 years. I kid you not. There is, I'm sure he would call it a collection. I call it garbage. Taller than I am. I'm almost 6 feet tall. Taller than I am throughout the house. There's one little footpath between the front door, the kitchen, the front door in a bed, and the front door in a toilet. It felt like I was in a cave, right? It was so hot, just bad. So that was my first true introduction to hoarding as a landlord. And I was a little bit frightened and scared for that unit and also for that individual, frankly. That's
amazing. And I've definitely done flips where I've walked in and I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that gets accumulated in these houses. I mean, it's off the charts crazy. I went into one house one time in New Jersey, and I mean, like floor to ceiling newspapers. And I was like climbing through this house. It felt like a haunted house. And I got to the top.
Oh, wow.
And there was like a person like in this room in a bed watching like a black and white TV. Feel like, I don't know how I couldn't open the door. And when I said, I asked the person who I was getting the house from, I got to check each room. I got to see what I'm buying, right?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you probably don't want to go in there. I was like, okay, that's a bad sign. But I'm trying to push the door open, and it was just like blocked by newspapers and all kinds of stuff. And I see this bed with a person just like sitting there with the, there's always like a blackout shades, and there was a black and white TV, and they were watching like Rachel Ray or something. I don't know what it was. I don't know how you live that way. I mean, it is amazing the amount of stuff. And
I don't know.
I mean, talk about that. You experienced doing this a lot with rental properties. The cost of getting that crap out of there in a dumpster. I mean, how much does that run you where you live?
So this particular unit, the tenant ended up moving when we took over. We got him into a situation that would help him. So we did the right thing as people. But we filled. It was about an 800 square foot 2-bedroom, like not a house, but it was like an apartment. And it was 2.5 dumpsters. It took us well over 8 hours to ice. I think all in, that was about $1,100 in fees and dump fees and all of that, just for that removal of not including the repair that had to be taken to the studs. Just the trash haul away was $1,100 as I recall.
Wow, we got a couple here in the chat. Let's check them out here in the chat. We've got Aaron Rich, who says, in the first month of my first rental, my septic failed. Need to have to install an entire new system. That's definitely...
that hurts.
Yeah, that hurts. Let's see. Kevin Murphy says, the biggest horror is not trying. I like that.
Good for you.
Yeah, the biggest horror is not trying. Let's see. Devin Ryder says the fear is in dealing with evictions, lawsuits, and state regulations. What do you say to that, Michael? Fear in dealing with evictions, lawsuits, and state regulations.
Sure. I mean, all of those. There are lots of things that can scare people. That's why I thought we should do this show, is because we all think there's greater probabilities than maybe there really are. So again, I will share my numbers and my numbers only. So I probably have at least one eviction going at a time, right? I have 200 units. It's very likely that I have one eviction going at a time. So that's just a cost of doing business, and it needs to be in your system. And that's why you have lost rents and vacancy factors and all of that in your spreadsheet. I'm sure you all do.
Right.
Lawsuits. I had my first lawsuit ability for a tenant that was in my units years ago. I in California. It's not necessarily the most friendly state, but that's why you have insurance. And my insurance picked it up, even though it was no fault of my own. It was an entirely frivolous claim. It was just cheaper for the insurance company and I to settle. And I'm sure that lawsuit from that tenant, the lawyer got half, and I'm sure it was one of those, don't pay and win kind of scenarios.
Right.
But again, it's a cost of doing business. It's why you should. You should have procedures in place. It's why you should have insurance. It's why you should have an umbrella policy. It does happen, but that was my first one after having 1,000 tenants, and it just happened this year. So they don't happen that lot. I've known, lots of people that own thousands of units, and they've never been hit. So just do the right thing, have the right stuff in place, and you'll be okay.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Michael brings up a great point, which is about the liability, right? That's why we buy properties in a limited liability company, right? As an LLC or other entity, another legal entity, because, it's not a matter of if you're going to get sued, it's a matter of when. And if you have a lot of properties, a tenant is going to, slip and fall. There's going to be some issue at some point, right? And you can really limit your exposure to that. You can really be protected by that by setting up an LLC when you purchase real estate. When we work with our clients for the first time at Morris Invest, they will come in, and when they select a property with us, one of the first questions one of our team members will ask them is, what LLC, do you have a name for your LLC? Come up with something unique. And it's it takes 5 minutes to set up an LLC. It's very, very simple to do. But that liability protection, I mean, here's a horror story. A friend of mine, we were gathering up for a party recently, and we were talking about rental real estate. And he knows what we do, which is lots of rental real estate. And he has 2 rental properties in Philadelphia. And I said, we were just talking, and I said, you have those in an LLC, don't you? And he said, I do now, which of course presaged the story, right? When the story was one night, his tenant in an expensive townhome that he owned in Philadelphia was walking home. The sidewalk, which you would think that's not really his responsibility, it would be the city, was like 1 inch higher than the rest of the sidewalk. She was drunk. Okay. She trips over this 1 little inch, hurts herself, and sues him. So she's drunk. She trips over the sidewalk and sues him. He didn't have the property in an LLC. He ended up having to go to court, deal with this. He ended up having to pay out. If he had it in an LLC, he wouldn't have had to deal with it this way. But he ended up having to pay out personally because now his whole personal assets are up and available for this lawsuit. And she went after him, not just the house, and his W-2 income and his personal property that he owns. He ended up having to pay out like $20,000 to this woman because she tripped on the sidewalk. Yeah.
That's part of living where we live. The great country of America. You have the right to sue anybody anytime for anything.
Yep. Unfortunately. All right, we got some good questions here, Michael. You want to take? So if you're just joining us, we're talking about landlord horror stories today. Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time is his YouTube channel. We get a lot of people saying that they just subscribed. Good stuff. We always like to help other channels out, and that's what this is all about, helping other people grow and expand. And we all grow by learning about rental real estate and building wealth. So Michael is my guest. Great to see you today. Michael, what part of the country are you in?
So I live in Mountain View, California, which most people refer to as the Bay Area. But what's interesting is I've chosen to invest in Fresno, California, which is a 2.5-hour drive from where I live. So I'm one of the, again, a busy professional who did this and had to do, hire a property manager and all of that. So I just always finding deals and securing capital. So that's where I invest.
And we talked to so many, and I totally apologize, Michael, because I had the wrong notes up. So
no problem.
I interviewed Michael back to back with another guest who was in Phoenix. So I had Michael's backstory wrong. I apologize. But
okay.
We're all kind of in this similar space. It's like, are you flipping houses? Are you buy and hold? So Michael is a buy and hold investor, which is what this channel is all about. So I apologize off the top there, Michael.
No worries, man.
My background in TV failed me miserably today. But we got some we've got some great comments here, and I want to get Michael's take on this. So landlord horror stories. Here is Chris Hawk. Thank you for the $10 super chat. I appreciate it. We're donating that. We're going to be donating that to UNICEF, actually, to help other kids, help kids who are in need. So Chris, thank you for that donation today. Potential rental horror story, Chris asks. OTR truck driver investing in mobile homes to grow cash fund to purchase conventional property. Bad idea? Not around to handle the business or the tenants. Well, Chris, I think what you're asking is being an absentee landlord, right? I mean, that's what I do. Michael's investing from Mountain View absentee in Fresno. I invest in the Midwest. I live in New Jersey, so I'm buying properties all over the country in different areas, and I never see my properties. And in fact, there's many rental properties that I own that I've never, ever laid eyes on. So that's my personal, once you have a property management team in place to handle those things, and you make sure that you're thorough and you're nurturing your portfolio, I believe there's nothing called passive income, right? Passive income is what we hope for, but at the end of the day, you still have to pay your property taxes. You still have to nurture your portfolio, because at the end of the day, a property management company is never going to take care of the property the way that you would ultimately want it to be. But if you can get there 95% of the way, right, then that passive income and cash flow is just money in the bank. Michael, what do you have to say to that, to Chris's question?
I think you nailed it. I think my whole story and what led to what, it is financial independence is one rental at a time. And I think property management's the hardest part of the business, and one you could not pay me to do. I mean, there's not a number that you could pay me to do my property management.
Yes.
I will gladly pay someone else. And what that means is I just have to work property management fees into my cost of doing deals. Right. And here's the deal, right? If a property management fee means the deal doesn't cash flow, don't do it, right? It's too skinny. Don't cheat yourself out of that. You don't need the extra stress. You don't need the extra work. And especially if you're a busy professional, a truck driver or whatever, because you already have a stressful job. You're already doing too much already. So don't add those extra hours and it's going to cause you not to sleep and cause you to be worse at your other day job. And it's just another deal, right? Get it cheaper, put more down, do something. So I have had property management since one house, and I'm very thankful I did.
Right. I think that it's very smart to do it from the very beginning, like Michael did, because I think what happens is a lot of times, and you probably see this, Michael, which is that someone buys a house they live in, right, with maybe their spouse, and then they move, and
Yeah.
they don't sell that first house; they keep it as, and I call it the allure of the first property syndrome. They have some sort of emotional attachment to it. They're like, oh, that's where we met, and we
Yeah.
conceived our first baby, and now we're moving because now we need more space. But they
More
keep
space,
that first
yeah.
place. But the ROI doesn't make any sense. They're upside down. They're not making any money. They're not making any cash flow because they've got a mortgage. The taxes are high. So they keep it and they manage it themselves. And then they get that second rental property and they manage that second one. It's because they have that first one that they think that they can handle managing. They've got some great tenants. Maybe it's a family friend. And, oh, this is easy managing properties, right?
Yeah.
But that's a slippery slope.
Well, I got to tell you, what you've just hit on there is the number one horror story for me as as an investor, right? Maybe it's not a landlord, but as an investor in rental properties, is creating an alligator, either creating or buying an alligator. So we all know the word negative cash flow. We know all of that, but I don't think that frankly is painful enough, right? So I've created an imagery. If you ever look at any of the stuff I do, I have an alligator, a drawing eating buckets of cash, because I want people to realize that if you buy or create or move out of your house and go somewhere else and have an alligator, you are going to be feeding that monster every month, and I want it to be painful. So as an investor, my biggest horror story is buying an asset that I have to feed every month. And I've only done that once. I actually did it when I did a cash out refi. It was cash flowing great. Then I did a cash out refi because I thought I could buy another one and, it would all work out. But God, it really hurt to freaking feed that thing every month until I finally sold it via 1031 exchange. So never, ever create or buy an alligator is my number one investor horror story.
Yeah. Well, I had another big one that happened to me. It actually happened not all that long ago. So imagine, here I am after doing thousands of deals, right? End up having a contractor that we paid recently over the summer, $15,000 to do a job out of escrow with the title company. So, it's held in an escrow account, doling out based on their work. The person disappears,
Oof.
gone, poof, out of phone doesn't work. Nobody from our team can get a hold of the contractor, and we had already paid out a certain amount based on work already done. Went to the property, found out no, none of that work was actually done, and ended up paying this contractor ahead of time. Big mistake, right? Big mistake. Never do that again. And just put our trust in this person, didn't do it right. And now we're having to try to track them down, try to file a lawsuit to recoup those investments. So another horror story. But, my friend Ken McElroy, who has done just thousands of deals, big multifamily investor, rich dad advisor to Robert Kiyosaki. One thing he told me recently is he's like, I've been burned by everybody in the real estate chain, from the contractor to the property management company to the painter to the roofer to the broker to the title company. I've been burned across the board. Would you say that sounds familiar to you, Michael?
Yeah. Again, real estate is a people. It's not an Excel spread, not some magic formula. It's a people business, and unfortunately, as much as we want to think that people are genuinely good, you're going to occasionally run across a devious individual. And more importantly, even the great people we work with, life events happen and stuff happens, and maybe they, I don't know, maybe they pick up a nasty drug habit or a gambling habit, or they get a mistress or a I don't know, right? People are people. And, maybe somebody did great work for you for 5 years, and then suddenly they're not. I mean, that was one of the horror stories I had. I had a contractor that I worked with on 6 or 7 different properties, was on time. It's the dream, right? On time, on schedule, even under budget a couple of times. And then suddenly something happened. The job started slipping, and he started needing more and more money up front. And, lo and behold, that went south quick. And, I lost, tens of thousands of dollars when I just because I had history, right? This was a guy, dinner with him and his family. And it's just, stuff happens.
Yeah, stuff happens, and we've certainly heard horror stories. We've experienced it too with property management companies that,
Yeah.
I mean, look, property management companies will try to squeeze you for money. Suddenly you'll get random bills. We had one property management company that we worked with that there were a lot of like mysterious. So the threshold for approving a repair was $200. Yeah. There's like a lot of mysterious $199 charges appearing on people's bills. And we're like, wait a minute. So we didn't have to approve that because it didn't hit the $200 threshold. But the house was just recently renovated. Why are we paying this $199? You know, and so that's why property management teams it's very important to have the right ones because boy, have we been burned.
I remember one. That was the hardest part of our journey when we started was property managers through 6 years. And the biggest horror story I remember with, I think it was number 3 was we had 4 or 5 properties at this point, but I remember one month we had like 9 service fees to show up at a house, and the service fee for this property manager was $45, right? Just to go, get a call, go out, $45. I'm like, you had to go out there 9 times, and like 4 of them are for the same thing. I mean, you're kidding me, right? I mean, what the hell is going on? Well, that's what we do, and blah blah. I'm like, you're just stealing. Just stop it.
Right.
You're taking from my account to feed something else, and that relationship was over very quickly.
We had another contractor up in Michigan. Fortunately, we caught him, but he ended up we're paying him to put in furnaces, new furnaces, not old furnaces. But it turns out, followed up to find out that he was placing old furnaces. We made sure that he had to go back out and eat that cost and put in brand new furnaces to make sure that those are taken care of. So, there are people who will try to, we had another property management company that was responsible for construction repairs and placing tenants in properties. Turns out they were pocketing money, not placing tenants in properties, and actually taking the money that they should have been getting for the rehab and just paying people back in rent without an actual tenant living in the property.
That's a Ponzi scheme right there.
Exactly. So when we discovered that, we immediately reported them to the authorities. I mean, this happens. When I told that story to someone, they said, "Oh my God, yeah, that happened here in Mississippi. That's happened here in Michigan." I'm like, "Really? It's that prevalent?" I learned about one out in your neck of the woods, out in California, where that happened. I mean, where they took the money, for rehabs. No one actually rehabbed the house. They ended up going to jail as a result of placing tenants. Have you heard those stories?
Absolutely. Actually, that individual did all of that in Fresno where I invest. And I've known people, some of my network was impacted by that individual. And yes, it was tens of millions of dollars he milked from people over about a decade. And thankfully he was caught it. And yes, he is serving.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So we got a great question here. I'm going to check the chat thread here. Actually, to the chat. So we got great chat questions going on here. So let's see. All right. So John V says, well, how then do we find a good property manager? Good question, John. Great question. That's the $50 million question. I mean, and Morbid 82 up here years ago, you had a rental property fall into your lap in the winter. We'll get to your question in a moment here. But Michael, what would you say to that? Because we work with property management companies all over the country and we're constantly vetting them. I would say, and I've done videos on this exact topic, I want property managers who are on my team. And it's very clear once you start working with them, if you can tell that they're not on your team, meaning that they're not helping nurture your portfolio of properties, that they're immediately nickel and diming you. We worked with one property management company that you could tell they were doing a money grab. It would start to send out email notifications. Hey, it's fall. And, it's time now to winterize and we'll do it for $500 and blah, 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 and you can, which is fine. They're like maybe looking out for your rental property, but you got to look beneath the surface a little bit and you start to realize that they're trying to nickel and dime you a little bit. So what would you say to that question?
Yeah, this is a great question. We talked a little bit about this on the video you and I did that will be out soon. Also, if you go to my channel, one rental at a time on YouTube, I did a video like the last 2 was one of this topic. And the short answer is, after all these years, there's only one thing that sort of keys to me, and that is I need to find out what the principal of the property manager does. What I have seen in my experience is either A, they're real estate agents or real estate brokers, right? And they're doing property management as a side gig or as a lead generation. Not, in my experience, not the greatest fit. What I want is the principal, right? The needs to be an investor. And I'm not talking, hey, I've got a house, I own my own primary residence. I want that individual to own dozens, and I want them to tell me what they buy, right? Okay, so you buy distressed houses, great, I get it. Oh, you buy fourplexes, great, I get it. Okay, you buy apartments, great, I get it. But what are they buying, right? I don't want them to be accidental, deal finders because they're in the play. The principle of the organization to be an investor, and I want to understand what they buy. They have to be active, right? I don't want I have this 100 portfolio and I generated a management company to manage my stuff. And oh, by the way, I take other investors when they fall up, right? So that's what I do.
Great answer. Yeah, that's really important. Then they understand investing. They understand what it means exactly. And look, maybe doing some maintenance over time. Another thing that we work with, and because of that one terrible property management company that was kind of running some criminal enterprise, whatever they were doing in Indianapolis, we shifted to another property management team that's very honest and has been fantastic and above board and working with us. And they want to help people do like maintenance over time if some of these repairs weren't done. Let's not all do it at once. What do we need to do in order to get this property rent ready? Let's not charge you $10,000, but okay, these certain items can wait. So if you have a property management company that's able to talk to you about, hey, you don't need to do all this right now, and they're actually talking you out of spending money, that's also a good sign, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. And when you start to get a large portfolio of properties, those conversations is important, right? Because, even if you're just going to go check all of the air conditioners because you're heading into summer, right? That's if you have, dozens of units, let alone hundreds of units, right? So if they're going to work with you and they're going to plan ahead of time going, hey, why don't we do these in April and these in May and these in June? And then that's when investor-oriented property manager, right? Because they under cash flow. That's what happens when you have a property manager that understands investors. Not always just, rent collection and expenses. It's okay. Well, there's time involved, right? Let's do different months. Let's have different procedures in place. Let's figure out what is safety and health. So those are must do's versus, oh, by the way, that can wait a month or that can wait, 3 months. Those all you will see in a property management firm that is investor led, in my opinion.
Yeah, great point.
They're oriented.
So we've got a few questions here in the chat. Lindsay H says, is one type of investor better than the rest when it comes to your property management company's principal? And John V says, great tip, Michael. Sounds better than looking for problem signs after they are on board. So how would you answer Lindsay's question? I just want them to be able to articulate what investor they are. I'm not one to judge good or bad. I need them to be able to articulate what they do. Are they single family homes? Are they duplexes? What are they? And then they have to be active, right? It's not, again, one of my bats is an investor led organization, but they build their portfolio in the 80s. And now he just uses this property as something to do between golf rounds. I mean, that's not what you want, right? So they need to be active and be able to articulate. I haven't seen, or maybe I haven't thought about what's a better type of investor, but I guess that's my answer. Great tip. So we recently had another horror story with one of our tenants. Just moved in a brand new tenant, but then tenants can play the game sometimes, right? The screening process can be important here, right, Michael? Which is you're going to have this experience, which this tenant moves in, but they know that if they just stop paying at a certain amount of time and then they file for bankruptcy or they go through that process, then they're able to play the game, skirt the law a little bit. So we call them professional renters. And it's hard to scope them out, because especially if they live in another state, then they move state to state. It sometimes can be hard, but that's a common theme, right? The professional renter where they know how to play the game.
Yeah, that's was going to be my last horror story, right? So we started with a horror story for my first unit. I just bought a triplex for a nice price. It'll all work out great. But I inherited a professional tenant. In California, the average eviction is right around 10 weeks. This individual knows every trick, so much so they have a YouTube channel, right? A YouTube channel, how to fight evictions. So this individual is likely going to be in my property probably a total of 5 months.
Wow.
Get them out. And that's fun, right? That's the first time I ever had anybody create YouTube channels on how to skirt the eviction. That's a new experience for me.
We had another horror story on a property that we bought. We ended up buying this thing. We ended up picking it from a wholesaler as part of a package, and the numbers looked good. We ended up getting it. We knew it needed work. It was going to be a total, it was going to be a total rip out that we needed to take care of. But we ended up going to the property thinking it was vacant because we were told that it was vacant. We get there, and there's a guy in the house with a gun and tells our team that he owns the house.
Oh,
And he's waving a gun at us. And well, no, sir, you don't own the property. We had to go back and get the deed to the property. But even then, that still wasn't enough. He thought he owned the property. Meanwhile, turns out he thought he was even renting it, but he never paid rent on the property. He was just squatting in the house. When we went inside the property, it was so fetid, disgusting. I mean, he didn't even have like running electricity in the house. So there was no electricity on this vacant house. And he had like a sink that had this like brown, disgusting water in it that was so pungent smelling that our contractors, like going in, couldn't even breathe in this thing. Finally, but then he wouldn't leave. And so we had to get the sheriff involved. We had to go through this eviction process, and it took forever to get him out of there. Finally, we got him out of there, but that's when the nightmare, was halfway over, because now we had to clean that disgusting stuff out of the house, rip it down to the studs in order to get it renovated and up and running. So we think, great, we got our contractors on a timetable, get in this property, start working on it. No, we have to deal with a guy with a gun walking in the property and saying that he owns the property. That'll scare you. Have you ever had anything like that?
I had, there's a property this year. I bought it from a stressed out landlord, right? Sort of kind of gave up. I was told it was tenant occupied. We walked it, when there was tenants there, right? So I didn't know any different. They said they're paying rent, whatever. But we closed the transaction, typical, 10-day cash close, all of that. Turns out that they were squatters, and, we were lied to by the seller. And, there was lots of disgusting things to figure out after 90 days to get the squatters out. So but again, that's just part of the model, part of the good to horse. It's very time consuming, but at the day when I fixed that property up and sold it, we made, nearly $40,000. So again, what may seem like a horror story and stress people out, if you buy it right and do the right things, real estate will take care of you. It's just, it's part of business.
Yeah, some of the fundamentals have to be there. We'll wrap it up here with one more horror story. So that property management construction team I was telling you about in the Midwest, out in Indiana, that was running, all kinds of crazy problems that they caused. We found out later too that they were not only, not doing rehabs and repairs and not placing tenants, but they were placing tenants in properties that they didn't even own. They were placing tenants, and because there's little recourse. I mean, you can call, it's a consumer complaint. You can kind of call the city, but it's a civil issue, right? So you can't call the police because the police are like, that's a civil issue. You got to go to court over that. So they found out about the houses that they didn't even own. They would place tenants in these properties and ask them to pay the tenants to pay them cash. And these tenants would then have receipts paying this other property management company cash for staying in these properties. And then when you go through the eviction process, that makes it a little bit extra hard for the new property manager. Yeah. Why? Because they're able to show receipts that they paid to live in the property, right? So they had like a fake lease, fake receipts, and these property managers that knew they could get away with this were charging people cash, pay me in cash, which is why, I will never work with a property management company that accepts cash for payment. You want to have a paper trail, you want to have a paper trail, direct deposit, all of those things with actual receipts. Because this is amazing. I mean, this is how some human beings operate, Michael.
I know. Yeah, I saw a lot similar things in my market. I actually crashed where frankly owners were doing what was called strategic default time, right? Where they just refuse mortgage anymore. Then they would lease it out or they would rent it to a tenant, would cash from the tenants and pocket it. And oh, by the way, they're not paying the mortgage, and soon there's a no fault on the tenants, like what the hell's going on. And there's just when people are rotten, bad stuff happens in a horror story.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So let me go one more question here. Ibrahim Ferrer says the first property recently called 10 plumbers just to get 2 to look at and only 1 willing to do the simple job. Many never seem to even answer or return calls. Is this common? Now working on finding a roofer. Well, yeah, I mean, this is one benefit of working with a property management team, Ibrahim, because typically they'll have people on their team. You may pay a little bit more to work with a property management team's construction team. You might pay like an extra 10%. But at least you know that the job is going to get done, typically in-house by them. You can shop it around and try to do it all yourself. But I've found, Michael, and I don't know if this is the case, if you've ever found this, but we have a home up in the Pennsylvania mountains, and you'll call like 10 people, right? You'll call like 10 electricians to come fix something. And honestly, it's the one who answers or who calls you back that gets the job. And it's amazing to me that these small business owners, these small contractors, don't just like get a cheap answering service, like Ruby Receptionists or Abby Connect, and they pay like $200 a month or something, or $200 a year to have just a simple answering service that they can take messages and get back to you. This is very, very common in my experience.
Yeah, I feel for anybody doing their own kind of job management or GCs or doing their own repairs, because that's the job. And frankly, it's one I've always chose to outsource, right? It's why I pay the property management team, right? It's the only thing to do is if you're going to build your reputation with these plumbers and roofers in his example. And once you do a couple and you're on your word and you pay them on schedule, you're going to jump to the line. It's tough when you start, but when you do the right things, you for out there, and which I've done in the past, and I pay them on, when the rainy season comes in California, I call jump for me. I don't know. It's tough to start. I feel for you.
Yeah, absolutely, Ibrahim. So good luck to you on that, but it is all too common. So just stick with it and don't get too frustrated about it. So there you go. Hey, my great pleasure to have Michael Zuber here on the show. We shared in the chat thread below ways to connect with Michael and check out his channel. Hopefully, we'll do some collaborations. I'll be on with Michael soon maybe on his side too. But we posted in the chat thread here, finding a good property manager. And you got to check out his channel as well, because hey, when we're in YouTube and you're sharing other videos and you're subscribing to great channels like Michael's, and we sort of lifts all boats, and it kind of helps people with their financial intelligence. So Michael, what do you have coming up on your channel that you can share with us?
I like to do these real talk videos now, right? I spend a lot of time sort of doing blocking and tackling of real estate investing, which is basically all PowerPoint based sort of tutorials. I've gotten from my audience is that they want, real estate is hot in the news today, especially in California, right? We have this thing called Prop 10, which is basically rent control. We have, if you read the National Association of Realtors, there's, hey, did the market change, right? What's going on is they went from a seller's market to a buyer's market. So I've actually adopted a new theme that I'm adding almost every day, 5 days a week, something called Real Talk. It's just an 8 or 10 minute video that I actually do when I walk my dog. Just to sort of give you my thoughts on the latest, latest news article or topic. It seems to be getting nice attraction, and more importantly, the audience typically, leave it on another video about something that they see, which sparks ideas. I get most of the ideas for my video contents from the community. Leave a comment, leave a like, be greatly appreciated.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. And I want to mention before we say goodbye, we're going to drop this into the chat thread right now. Our team is standing by because we're going to be doing a live event here coming up in the next few months, and we want to poll the audience. So if you can take a few moments out of your day today and just click on this Google form, the link is right there in the description below. Just take a few minutes. It's only like a few quick questions. Will you come to this live event? We have a few city choices. Let us know the cities that you are close by or that you would like to go to. We have Orlando listed there as well. And we have a couple of other just little quick questions about topic ideas for our live event. So we'd love for your feedback. So it's just a Google form. It's very simple to fill out, and it's a simple poll that we would love your feedback on. So please click that in the description below. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much, Michael, for joining us. Check out his YouTube channel, One Rental Property at a Time, One Rental at a Time. We have the links also below, and go ahead and subscribe to Michael's channel. Michael, great to see you, and we'll have you back on real soon.
Happy.
Awesome. And my thanks to all of you for joining us on today's spooky show on this Halloween for Landlord Horror Stories. We hope we didn't scare you off to real estate investing, because I still believe it's the number one way to build wealth. You're going to have these hoops and hurdles that you need to jump through. This is all part of the process. And look, even sometimes this happens to people at the very beginning. Sometimes it happens to people a few years into it. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen to you at some point. Just build that into the process and you won't be turned off by it. We'll see you next time, everyone. Now go out there, take action, become a real estate investor. I believe it's the number one way to build wealth. We'll see you next time.